their son know.
2 months later, he says, "Mom, we need to tell you some things."
Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
This is a safe place to talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
I try to be an emotional compass and point you in the right direction.
5, 4.
I am not giving up on you. I want you to take a look at these beautiful and bright twin girls, Lauren and Erica. They were inseparable from the minute they were born. They dressed alike, loved swimming and dancing, and hanging out with their older brother, Nolan, until tragedy struck on the morning of July 19th, 2011, when Lauren was killed in her bed, stabbed over 20 times by their mother, Allison's boyfriend, while Erica was in the same bed just a few feet away. Their quiet town hadn't had a homicide since 1978, and the brutal killing sent shockwaves through the community.
He's accused of one of the most horrifying crimes in the history of the city of Sherrill. He allegedly took a kitchen knife and repeatedly stabbed his girlfriend's 6-year-old daughter to death. Police say at about 8:30 this morning, 6-year-old Lauren Bellius had been stabbed. The little girl was pronounced dead at Oneida Hospital. David Treblecock appeared on Oneida County Court to answer a grand jury indictment charging him with second-degree murder. Treblecock reportedly told investigators that God instructed him to kill Lauren Bellius in order to get into heaven.
The court finds that Mr. Treblecock lacked criminal responsibility by reason of mental disease or defect.
Judge Dwyer said the most convincing testimony came from Dr. Lawrence Farrago.
Everything he looked at and studied pointed to the conclusion that the defendant suffered from paranoid schizophrenia.
There was stunned silence in the courtroom. Then there were sobs.
It's just a travesty of justice for this to happen. This monster should never be able to walk the face of this earth again, as far as I'm concerned.
Allison says the morning that her 6-year-old Lauren was killed plays over and over in her mind.
On the morning of July 19th, 2011, I woke up to the sounds of my daughter screaming. I ran across the hall, noticed that their bedroom door was shut. I pushed on the door to try to get it open and couldn't. I thought that David was on the other side of the door. I could hear the girls screaming. So I started kicking and punching at the door and was finally able to break through it. It wasn't David that was holding the door, it was a dresser to barricade himself in the room with my twin daughters, Lauren and Erica. When I walked into the room, I saw David standing on the ladder to my girls' bunk beds. I saw Erica on the top bunk, and she was screaming. And Lauren, I couldn't see until I got closer, and I saw David had the knife in his hand and was stabbing her. I started screaming at David, "What are you doing? Why would you do this to my daughter?" He just stopped everything for a minute to turn around and tell me, "She's not your baby. She needs to die." It just didn't even sound like his normal voice when he said it. It's just a different person. I pulled him off of Lauren. He started to cut at his wrists a little bit. When I was checking on Lauren, he came back and pushed me out of the way. And he climbed back up onto the top level of the bunk beds, and he was stabbing her again. And when I pulled him back off of her, the railings broke, and Lauren rolled off the bed and landed face down on the floor. She was still breathing, her eyes were open, but not focusing on anything, and she was very pale and cool. I started CPR on Lauren. He took the knife and stabbed himself right in the chest, and when he pulled the knife out, he was smearing the blood around on himself. As David was cutting himself, I was hoping that he would just kill himself, leave the rest of us alone. He came back over and stabbed her in the neck. I fought with him some more. He wrapped his left arm around me and just kind of restrained me and pulled me back away from Lauren, and then he used his other hand to stab her in the chest one more time. When he pulled the knife out of her chest, he took the knife to me. It was stuck in the bone right here, and that gave me just enough time to grab a hold of the blade with my other hand. When I grabbed a hold of the blade, it severed all the tendons in my fifth finger of my left hand. Erica sat at the top of that bunk. She was next to Lauren in that bed for a long time before I could get to them. He stabbed her 24 times that morning. She saw a lot. David and I were fighting each other for that knife for about 25 minutes. I did manage to get him pinned down on the floor, and I was on his back. I tried to cut his throat, and it just wasn't a sharp enough knife for that. And that didn't work. I just stabbed straight into the neck and then pulled it out and stabbed him in the back, hoping for arteries and lungs. David got back up again. This time he used the railing to the bunk beds. I just stood up and grabbed the end of those boards and just ran and drove him back into the closet. He was unconscious at that point. I laid Lauren down on the front yard and went back to doing CPR. And I sent the kids next door to our neighbors to call 911. They took Lauren ahead of me in her own ambulance. When I walked into the room, they were already all done and cleaning up, and they had already pronounced her dead, so. I cry every day, but not in public, not around people.
Allison says that she had no indication that David was capable of taking the life of her precious daughter.
David and I were dating for almost a year and a half, and there was never any sign that anything like this could ever happen. He was never physically violent or aggressive towards me. We didn't argue. He never even raised his voice. David and the kids got along great. The first time they met him, Lauren started calling him the funny bald guy. Everything was going great until about a week before Lauren died. We had started making plans to go to Florida. At first, he seemed really excited about it until the plans became final. He said that he had memories of having sexual relations with a 12-year-old girl while he was 18 or 19 years old. He had concerns that when he got there that there would be police waiting for him. The way he talks is this girl was just relentless. She was after him all night. I tried to see his side of it, but at the same time, having daughters, I think that my opinion of him changed that day. While I was thinking about leaving him, he actually did end up leaving me for a day. He just says, well, I'm gonna straighten some things out. He just seemed like he was battling something inside. I did have concerns that he might try to hurt himself. And around 7:30 that night, he showed up back at the house. Walks in with a big smile on his face, and he said, oh, no, it's fine. I figured it out. I'm better now. Everything's good. At one point, David got down on one knee and proposed to me. In my mind, I already knew that we were done. I was just trying to find a way to ease out of it without everybody being hurt or devastated. That whole week, with everything that he said and did, nothing ever suggested to me that he was going to be violent or do anything like what he did to her.
Well, interestingly enough, Allison was not the one who recently wrote to me. Her estranged ex-husband, John, also reached out saying Allison has kept him from seeing his surviving children. Allison says that John's behavior is to blame for his rocky relationship with his children, so we're going to talk to him in a bit. But first, I have a lot that I want to talk to you about. And I want to start out by saying one thing you won't hear me say is that I know how you feel. I can't possibly know how you feel. I can just tell you that straight up. Take me through, you talked about what happened. Take me through the moment when you realized what had happened, that your baby's life was actually hanging in the balance.
I think I knew that I was going to lose her while we were still in that room. I tried and tried and tried to do CPR on her. Every chance I could get him to leave her alone, I would go to her and just try to keep her breathing. And at one point I even said, you've already killed her, why don't you leave her alone? Because he just kept coming back and coming back after her for one more time, and just wouldn't leave her alone.
He went in to your daughter's room He stabbed her 24 times. And he barricaded that door, which, from a psychological perspective, causes me to really question this insanity defense.
Yes. It was worse than anything I've ever seen in any horror movie. It felt like I was living one. He just kept coming back and coming back and coming back. And after I did have to stab him, he went down, and I thought he was done. And he just got back up again, and he just kept coming.
But you were actually able to get him on his stomach, get the knife, and try to cut his throat.
Yeah.
And at that point, you thought, surely he will be dead. But he got up.
He got up. I stabbed him right through the side of the neck, thinking that should do it. And then again in the back, right where the lung is, and he went down. And then a minute later, he's right back up again, coming right back at us.
Well, coming up, some of David's strange behavior before the killing. Were there red flags? And we're going to talk about that. Plus, how are Allison's children doing now? All that when we come back.
The police kept coming in to question my daughter Erica because she was in the room. She told the exact same story. And when she's not being forced to talk about it, it's like it didn't happen. Nolan blamed himself for years. He could have brought a hammer. He could have done this. He could have done that.
And later, she got my daughter killed. Were you sober when you wrote that? There was a half-empty bottle of whiskey in your hotel room, and you appeared to be intoxicated this morning.
About 4 hours after we had been in the emergency room, the police started showing up to question me, and I heard one of them saying something about how David said something. And I looked at him and, what do you mean David said anything? And he said, he's awake now and he's talking. I said, what do you mean he's awake and talking? I thought he was dead. And they said, oh no, he woke right up. After it happened, he was talking in the ambulance the whole way to the hospital about what he did. My biggest regret about that morning, other than losing my daughter, obviously, is the fact that I left that room and thinking that David's dead. And now I really wish that I would have made sure. Because finding out 4 hours later that he's awake and talking while I'm holding my dead daughter in my arms was not a good moment for me. It doesn't seem fair to me that he's still alive. He still has a birthday every year. I'm at the cemetery every year for my daughter's birthday. He's still alive and might even get out someday with no charges against him, but my daughter was never going to come back to me.
Allison says her son Nolan and Lauren's twin sister Erica have found their own ways to cope since the killing, but worries about how the trauma may manifest as they get older.
Right after this happened, the police kept coming in to question my daughter Erica because she was in the room. She told the exact same story, but then she just put it away. And when she's not being forced to talk about it, it's like it didn't happen. She's very strong. She saw a play therapist for about 9 months. She said there really wasn't much to do for her because Erica wasn't ready to talk, and she didn't feel the need to push her into talking about it because Erica was doing okay. Nolan had a tougher time. He blamed himself for years. He said that he wishes that he had done something that day. He wishes that he had gotten into that room too. He could have brought a hammer. He could have done this. He could have done that. But Nolan was an 8-year-old little boy who couldn't have done anything. So we just keep telling him, you did exactly what I would want you to do, and you stayed safe. Now, he's great. He's a high honor student. He's got a future mapped out. He wants to be an engineer. That's all he talks about. I worry about my kids growing up and what their lives are going to be. I hope that they don't avoid relationships because of what they've gone through. I hope they don't lose hope. I hope they keep trying for happiness and love.
How are you doing with this before we talk about the children?
I've always told everybody I feel like I've just been divided in two since it happened. I feel like there's the part of me that goes on living and getting up every day and making sure my kids get to school and going to work and doing everything that needs to be done, yet there's this other part of me that is in that room every day, all day, and it just plays on a reel over and over and over again.
You see yourself as though you're watching someone else.
Most of the time, and feeling like impending doom.
What are the worst things you say to yourself in your darkest times?
I blame myself. I've gone over and over in my head what has gone on, what happened the week before, trying to pick it apart. What did I miss?
I made a list of the red flags that you've shared with us. You said he had sex with a 12-year-old. That's just rape. He had cheated on you and continued to have contact with the person. He told you that you had found that he was a sex addict. Cyber sex, he talked about that and said he really feared what would happen if people saw what he had said on the internet, right? Do you know what he was referring to?
No.
There were erratic emotional swings, threatening your son with the bad things and the evil in the world. Lauren had been traumatized the night before, correct? You went into the room and she was upset?
When I got home, Lauren was just real flushed and red in the face and just kept saying, "Mommy, I don't feel good." We talked for a few minutes, though, and she settled down, and by the time I was ready to tuck her into bed, she was giggling and acting like her normal self again and didn't have any more to say about it. But the whole time I was with her and trying to get her ready for bed and talk to her, David's behind us. He's in the room. I didn't get any more time alone with her.
He's lurking.
Mm-hmm.
What did you find out about that?
About 2 months later, in the middle of the night, my son comes and wakes me up, and he says, "Mom, I need to talk to you. I need to tell you some things that happened, and I don't know if it means anything or not, but I think it does, and I want you to know, and I want to tell the police." And he said that when I had gone to the store that night, he was walking down the hall past the girl's bedroom, and David was in the room with Lauren, and she was getting changed into pajamas. And she was only partially dressed. She was just naked from the waist down. And he saw him sitting on the bed next to Lauren and telling her how pretty she is. And right while he was doing that, David saw that no one was standing there. So he got up and walked over to the door and said, "Do you mind? This is private." And he shut the door. As soon as I heard that, I said, "Oh my God." So I called the DA first thing in the morning, and she told us to bring him in.
And you didn't know that at the time, but you now know that's what she was upset about when you got home. Allison's ex-husband says she blames him for the death of their daughter. She currently has an order of protection against him, some harassing text he recently sent her. So she's going to have to be backstage while I ask him about that when we come back, because they can't be in the same physical space. We'll be right back.
About 6 months after Lauren died, I got a phone call from Nolan. He was crying and said that he was in the car with his dad, and his dad was swerving all over the place, saying that he was going to kill himself, that he can't live anymore without Lauren.
I've never threatened to hurt myself or anybody else.
Social media was tough. There was a local website that was pretty brutal. Most of the people on there were criticizing me, calling me a whore, saying that I moved this guy in right after I left my husband. What did I expect? It's my fault. The things that they were saying was confirming what I was already feeling about myself. I think any parent who loses a child, especially in a situation like this, will blame themselves. And come to find out that my ex-husband sat talking to reporters, telling them that 2 weeks after I kicked him out, I moved someone else in, which is so far from the truth.
Well, John and Allison's marriage fell apart before the death of their 6-year-old daughter, Lauren, but the estrangement has only gotten worse since then. John says immediately after Lauren's passing, his struggle with alcoholism got worse, and Allison's hypervigilance has prevented him from seeing his surviving 2 children.
My marriage with Allison was never particularly good. My alcoholism was definitely a factor. As a result of the tragedy, my alcoholism got considerably worse and eventually spun out of control.
I left him because he's a drunk and a drug addict. Nothing changed since Lauren died. He's the same person he was the day before she died.
Shortly after the murder, Allison started making it extremely difficult for me to see the children. She was under the assumption that my drinking was something that would impact the children, and ultimately she stopped letting me see the children altogether.
About 6 months after Lauren died, I got a phone call from Nolan. He was crying and said that he was in the car with his dad, and his dad was swerving all over the place, and he kept threatening to run into other cars, saying that he was going to kill himself, that he can't live anymore without Lauren.
I think that story is something that she may have believed based on the fact that my kids thought I was driving crazy. I was definitely upset. I wasn't driving crazy, but I was crying. I've never threatened to hurt myself or anybody else.
As long as he continues the path he's on with the drinking, he's not fit to be a father. He's not fit to even be around his kids. I'm not exposing my kids to any more of that.
The last time I saw my children was about 8 or 9 months ago. The whole idea of not seeing my kids has been the constant fuel for this thing that drives my alcoholism.
I'm not the one that keeps him from his kids. It's his own lifestyle. It's his drinking. It's the violence, the threats, the manipulation.
I believe if I was able to have a continual relationship with my children, that I would have no problems containing my alcoholism.
Okay, John, you've been listening to the conversation so far. Let me begin as before, telling you I'm terribly, terribly sorry for your loss. I cannot even imagine, as a father, what it must feel like to have lost your child. Just dad to dad here, are you stable enough to be a guiding force in your children's life right now?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Are you an active alcoholic right now?
Yes. But I wouldn't be if my children were in my life.
That tells me that you're not being honest with yourself. You don't get the children and then clean yourself up, because let me tell you, having been trained as a forensic psychologist, it is not a question of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. It is real clear. What comes first is you get yourself straight, you get yourself sober, you get yourself stable, and you earn the right to be in those children's life, and they deserve to have their dad in their life. When our AP was picking you up this morning at your hotel room, there was a half-empty bottle of whiskey in your hotel room this morning.
Yes, sir.
And you appeared to be intoxicated this morning.
Yes.
Are you trying to get along with your ex-wife?
There is zero communication there.
Well, it's not zero. You forwarded a text that said, the reality is she was a pathetic pig of a woman. Response, evil is out there. John, she got my daughter killed. Does Jamie know you puke after eating? Just curious, you'll always be gross. Pig, pig. My kids, they are going to know that mom wasn't the innocent victim that she plays like a fiddle. Just a nasty, ungrateful, pathetic excuse for a human being that got their sister killed. Were you sober when you wrote that?
No.
Do you believe that she got your baby killed?
I've never blamed Allison for any of that.
Well, that's not the only time you've said it. I mean, you just said that straight up. She got my daughter killed.
I wanted her to hurt.
So how can John regain a relationship with his children and be able to co-parent with Allison? So we're going to take a break. We're going to bring Allison back and talk about that next, and as well as meet a new man in her life when we come back. We'll be right back.
That morning just replays over and over all day, every day. That day changed me. It showed me that you do whatever you have to do for your kids. And if that means you'll kill someone, you will kill somebody to protect your children.
Closed captioning provided by In the 5 years since Allison's daughter was tragically killed, Allison says dealing with it just really hasn't gotten any easier. She's just had to learn how to live with it differently.
Life is different. Since that happened, I feel like my mind has been split in two. There's the side of my brain that goes through every day and gets up and gets dressed and goes to work. At the same time, the other side of my brain is in that room still. That morning just replays over and over all day, every day. That day changed me. It showed me that you do whatever you have to do for your kids. And if that means you'll kill someone, you will kill somebody to protect your children. I don't have a lot of trust for people the way I used to. Relationships are tough, especially with men. About 2.5 years or so after Lauren was killed, I was coerced into going to my 20-year high school reunion. And while I was there, I reunited with a guy that I've known since I was 5 years old. His name's Jamie. And we hit it off that night. And 3 years later, we're engaged. It feels great most of the time. But when we do have even these minor little arguments, I still feel that fear set in. And I feel like something's about to happen, and that's how I feel about relationships now. Is when's this one going to snap and try to hurt me too?
Allison's fiance, Jamie, is joining us in the audience, and I'd like to add him to the conversation. Jamie, thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
You've come into a very complex situation here, right?
Very, very much so.
And you're under a microscope.
Oh, yeah.
Here because she, I'm certain, is very hypervigilant, right?
Correct.
And how do you deal with that?
One day at a time. She's an incredible woman, beautiful inside and out, and she's a huge hero.
Your ticket to paradise is transparency, because obviously you have some real trust issues, and justifiably so. Seriously. Yeah. I mean, anybody would understand that. And so your answer to that is transparency. She's got to be able to know your history, your childhood, your family, your people, everything about you, good, bad, and indifferent. So she doesn't have to wonder if tomorrow is going to be the day that the bomb is dropped, like, oh, hell, I didn't know that. So you've got to be willing to say, I want you to know what I did in grade school and junior high and high school, and I want you to know my family, and because that's information that that you need to have. And we do a deep dive on people when they come here, and you're in a relationship with a very fine gentleman here. This is a very quality guy here, and I think he's going to prove that across time. Now, Allison's son Nolan wanted to speak to me about his life since his sister's death. For a time, he thought he could have done more to save her, which is a huge burden for a child. And with his parents' permission, I'm going to be having a conversation with this amazing young man when we come back. Closed captioning provided by Allison and John both worry about how the trauma of Lauren's death will affect their now 14-year-old son, Nolan, and Laura's twin, Erica, who is now 12. Nolan wanted to speak with me about his feelings since that horrible night, and I'm going to do that right now. How you doing?
Good.
It's good to meet you. So how are you coping with this?
I just try to avoid thinking about it and avoiding any situations where it could come to thinking about it.
is I've learned that children have this really bad habit of finding a way to blame themselves when things go wrong. They look at it and say, wow, what could I have done different? Should I have said this, done this, been here, been there? Do you ever really question yourself about that?
Occasionally, but not very often.
How you get along with your mom and your sister?
Great with my mom. My sisters sometimes, but that's just how siblings usually behave.
She's annoying sometimes?
Yes.
Yeah. And how about your dad? Do you miss him?
I have very mixed feelings for my father right now. I mean, I'm always going to love him because he is my father, and it's just the things he's done as of recently, I can't really, that's why I don't really like to see him, is because of all the things he's done recently.
Like what?
He used, as you probably know, he does have a very long history with drinking. And, like, this is a long time ago, but when he first got out of rehab, like, I think earlier this year, we found out that he was drinking, and he's just blatantly lying to us, saying that he's not, and that he's staying sober.
Well, let me leave you with this thought. Alcoholism is a disease.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very difficult disease to treat.
Mm-hmm.
He's struggling with it, and pull for him to get better. Don't just judge him for being sick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not asking you to make excuses for it. I'm not asking you to even make allowances for it, but just recognize that it is a sickness and he does need treatment for it. It would be the same as if he had a kidney disease or if he had arthritis or he had some other disease. It has to be treated. Mm-hmm. And what I'm going to encourage him to do, and what I'm going to try to do, is get him to get himself the kind of treatment that will really stick. Mm-hmm. And just some rehab patch is not it. It takes a lot more than that. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to really try to encourage him to do that. Mm-hmm. How are you doing in school?
Things have been going great as of the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm. So do you have friends?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a good time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you want to do when you grow up?
I want to become an engineer of some sort.
An engineer? Uh-huh. You good at math and all that?
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah. All right. Listen, it's good to meet you.
You too.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Good luck with that engineering. All right.
Some members of my family have put together a petition to create a law called Lauren Sylvia's Law that would essentially prevent people with mental illness who commit violent acts against children from being able to avoid prison by using an insanity plea.
That's the goal of Lauren Sylvia's Law, is to make sure that even if they're found not guilty for a mental defect, they still should have to serve out the length of time for the crime. Just because he had a mental health issue doesn't mean that he didn't do this to her. Now he has a chance to get out, and that's unfathomable to me.
Well, the man who took the life of Allison's 6-year-old daughter remains in a mental facility. Allison says she is still trying to change legislation. So tell me about this legislation you want to have.
We just don't feel like insanity should be a get-out-of-jail-free card.
In a mental facility, unlike prison, are you notified if and when he's released?
No. He's protected by HIPAA laws, so we can't ever call and get an update and make sure he's where he's supposed to be. We can't even find out if he's there at all because he's covered by privacy laws.
And you have information about this legislation that is written up that you want people to know about.
There's a petition on change.org. It's called Lauren Sylvia's Law. Mm-hmm. There's also a Facebook page that my sister put together called Justice for Lauren Sylvia Bilius that breaks down everything that happened, what the crime was, what we're looking for.
We are going to put links to all of the locations that you just talked about on drphil.com. Our homepage for the Dr. Phil Show, and we're also going to put them on my Facebook page, so you'll be able to find those and click those off. And you have to take care of yourself as well, because everything you're describing, and I am not in a position to diagnose you at this point, but everything you're describing has the earmarkings of PTSD, which,
Yeah, I know.
I mean, you wouldn't argue with that, right?
No.
Joining me now on Polycom is Dr. Frank Lawless. He's chairman of the Dr. Phil Advisory Board. He's co-founder of the Lawless PVP and Peace Center, and he is the author of the PTSD Breakthrough, the revolutionary science that is really changing how PTSD is looked at. And Dr. Lawless and I have been talking about you in great detail, and so I wanted Dr. Lawless to weigh in on this.
The amygdala is a very primitive element of the brain and doesn't understand language, doesn't understand words. So you have to use primitive sensory input in order to change the brain patterns. And we often find that sound and smell and those kind of primitive approaches will actually help train the brain and eliminate this emotional trap.
All right, Dr. Lawless, thank you. We're going to make sure that you guys connect and we talk about this.
Good.
All right, thank you. You know, also sometimes I think you just kind of need a break for a family sometimes. You just need something to look forward to. We heard that Nolan wants to be an engineer. You just heard him talk about that. We've been talking to the State University of New York, the SUNY Polytechnic Institute, and they would like to offer Nolan a full scholarship to their week-long youth camp this summer. It's all for engineering, and they would like to have him come as their guest and be part of their engineering camp. So can we do that for him?
Yeah.
And then we heard that Erica likes gymnastics, and so Valley Gymnastics near your hometown has offered her a year of gymnastics classes in a safe, fun, and disciplined environment. And they teach their students to really strive for excellence, not only in gymnastics, but all facets of their lives. So we've set her up to have that in her life for a year, so she can really pursue this if she wants to, okay? And, you know, we wanted this family to just take a deep breath. So we want to send you guys as a whole family somewhere really cool. So we want you to pack your bags because you're all going to go to Iceland, okay? This is, I've got to tell you, I've been there. This is really popular for whale watching. It's the Northern Lights, beautiful lagoons. You will be staying in the heart of Reykjavik at the Kavosin downtown boutique hotel, all courtesy of WOW Air, the ultra low-cost transatlantic airline. Can we give that to you as a gift? All right, great. And as we go to break, we want to take a moment to remember this precious, precious child, Lauren, from the people who love her the most.
Lauren loved the camera. She loved to be the center of attention. She would come out and just hop around on her little stick horse that she had. She had that type of sense of humor that made everybody laugh, kids and adults. Lauren would make up songs. She'd improvise. She used to sing songs to me like that every day. Lauren and her twin were inseparable. They did everything together. They just loved each other. Lauren was the ringleader. Usually was the one who would get them into trouble, but she was the one who always had the ideas, and Erica was always right there to back her up. She just had a huge heart. She cared so much about everybody. She heard about Locks of Love when she was only in first grade. Lauren just got it in her head. She wanted to give her hair to somebody who needed it more than her. Lauren was a little ray of sunshine. She was just a special kid.
Closed captioning provided by
Angel Sound.
Here we go today. Have you finished all of your holiday shopping? You only have 10 days left. 10 days. So if you're like me, you are in a huge panic. My wife, Robin, has just the thing to make someone on your list like really happy. and it's just a click away. A gift from the new Robin McGraw Revelation luxury skincare line.
Yes, I just launched my collection with 14 brand new amazing products a few weeks ago. And I'm so happy that women are just loving it. One of my products, Let There Be Bright, is a triple action brightening serum. This potent serum fades the appearance of existing spots and discoloration, brightens the skin, and reduces the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. Since this is the holiday season, I also have a gift for everyone in the audience. You're all going home with my Let There Be Bright serum.
You're going to find your gift from Robin right under your seat. Take a look.
There you go.
To order any or all of her luxury skincare collection, go to robinmcgrawrevelation.com. That's robinmcgrawrevelation.com. And a special thanks to all of my guests today, and a special thanks goes to Dr. Frank Lawless at the PNP Center, as well as WOW Airlines. We'll see you next time.